They want to run the football to the left.
And they're moving quickly. Chad Johnson in stride. And there he goes. Touchdown, Cincinnati. Ran past Bob Sanders. And they answer right back.
And he's waiting at the 15-yard line. Bodine snaps it back. Dalton has time. He throws it into the end zone. It is caught by Eifert for a badly needed Bengals touchdown. And here's a quarterback sneak, and Andy Dalton dives into the end zone.
You guys are old school.
You bet. Palmer under pressure from the end zone. Johnson, what a catch.
What a throw. Dalton throws. A.J. Green at the 50. Green off to the races. Green still going. A.J. Green at the 5. Touchdown, Cincinnati. 80 yards.
Hooday, Bengal fans. He is Mon. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse, the heartbeat of our Cincinnati Bengals. Mon, Eric wanted to show that new trailer in the beginning there, since you weren't able to make the 2005-2015 show. Just really quick, I asked all the guys there, when you watch that, I mean, are those not some of the best memories that you have had being a Bengal fan? Those were some great years, were they not?
Yeah, very, very exciting. Just seeing those and getting to view them again definitely brought back a lot of memories. Great teams, a lot of what ifs there, a lot of what ifs. I know you guys had that great debate last week on that. I wasn't able to be a part of that show. I'm a firm 2015 guy, and I love 2005. I have big affinity for those players, great players. I just, just to give my 2 cents real quick, I just think the defense was the difference. The defense was the difference. It was that much better. But that ship has sailed. Let's talk about other stuff. But I was right about 2015, and we'll just keep it at that.
No, I don't think so. No, it's good to have you back, brother. It's good to have you back, and thank you everybody for joining us on Valentine's edition of the Bengals Pulse. So thank you, Hooday, everybody, for jumping on. We got a packed show. Need to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl, how the Bengals are going to get back to the Super Bowl, and then break down the defensive side of the ball in 2023, where Mon and I are going to grade each position, talk a little bit about it. And Mon, I'm excited to see what you have. I will tell you, I was not very nice to the defense in 2023. But before we do that, obviously, I do want to say really quick, thoughts and prayers to all the people involved today and the victims of the Kansas City Chiefs parade shooting today. Just absolutely a horrific event. And, Mon, it's extremely sad, when something like that seems to be in the news all the time now. It's just it's a sad world right now. And again, just thoughts and prayers to everybody out there in Kansas City. Hopefully we don't hear of any more tragedies from that shooting today.
Yeah, terrible. I just read about it on Twitter. I haven't been able to watch the news and get more information. Hate to see it. It happens too much in this country. And you're right. It's tough times, and prayers to everybody there. It's a time to celebrate and have fun, and celebrate your team that won a Super Bowl. And then some idiot decides to do what he did, and it sucks, and I feel bad for him.
Well, let's move on to some positive to positive stuff here. First of all, let's talk about the Super Bowl, Mon. Just an absolutely crazy game, right? I mean, I think it's when you're watching the game, my wife and I were watching it together, and it was like the 49ers could just never get a step ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs. They They dominated the first half of the football game. And I hate to say this, but the the nightmare known as Kyle Shanahan in the playoffs, he reared his ugly head again. You know, you look back at Super Bowl 51, when he was the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. They have a 28-3 lead. He stops running the ball, and of course, that game is history. The New England Patriots come back and win that football game. One of the probably the worst Super Bowl loss of any team in the Super Bowl franchise history. And then in 54, Super Bowl 54, he's head coach of the 49ers. He's playing the Kansas City Chiefs. He's up by 10 and lets the Chiefs come back and win that one again, stops running the football. And then we see the same thing. We see the same thing last week. It's just insane. They're up by 10. They are dominating the game. Patrick Mahomes looks absolutely terrible. He looks lost. The 49ers defense is playing lights out, even after Kinlaw tears his Achilles on a freak accident getting back onto the field. After all of that happens, the 49ers are still in control of that football game in the second half, and they stopped running the football. I mean, Mon, please make some sense of it. It's absolutely insane what is going through Kyle Shanahan's head. He's got the best running back in the NFL. It's crazy.
Yeah, I salute the Chiefs, for winning the way they did. Their offense, they still have Kelsey and they have Mahomes, two first ballot Hall of Famers, but they won this year because of that defense. The defense was really, really good. Chris Jones made some key plays. Spagnuolo is a great playoff defensive coordinator. But you're right. Jake, it reminded me of Super Bowl 56 in this sense. When we had the lead against the Rams, we had 4 possessions, 4 punts. We needed one good drive. The Rams had 5 possessions and 4 punts, and they scored on the last drive. You just felt that. You sensed the same thing. There was a lull for the 49ers. They went 2 quarters. They did nothing. They had a lead, and they literally did nothing, and they could have padded that lead. They could have had a 14, 17-point lead at one time. And then, of course, you can't play football that way against Pat Mahomes. He's going to find a way to come back and win. And it was a good game. That last hour was crazy football, absolutely crazy football. And if it's true that the 49ers didn't understand the playoff format for overtime, that's a fireable offense. That's ridiculous. And they fired their defensive coordinator today, who's a good coach. But, I mean, if your team doesn't understand, the playoff overtime scenario, come on, guys.
That's got to be on the head coach. I mean, again, that's Kyle Shanahan. Obviously they're going to have some kind of a scapegoat there with firing Wilkes, but Wilkes coached a hell of a game. I mean, if anybody should be fired, it's Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he
that's not going to happen. I hear you.
No, it's not. But he literally lost the football game for the 49ers. And again, some of the Chiefs players were talking about it today. They asked Warner twice, are you sure you want to take the ball? He obviously did not understand the overtime rules. Why in the world would you not want the ball last when you have that guy on the other side of the field? Why would you not want the ball last?
Put pressure on them. Put the pressure on them. Put the pressure on. Make them punt. You come down, kick a field goal, game's over. It's
terrible.
Just they're gonna. I mean, it's terrible. We went through it in Super Bowl 56. You have to spend the whole offseason just fretting and thinking and replaying those last few plays. That's what the 49ers are going through. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad the Super Bowl is over. I'm sad football season is over though. But off-season football is here. Everybody's 0-0 again, and let's rebuild our roster. Let's rebuild it.
First of all, Overzealous, happy 34th anniversary to you and your wife. That is an amazing, amazing feat. Congratulations there. Vanguard says, Mom, what about Travis Kelce putting his hands on Andy Reid? I'll tell you this, right? As a head football coach myself, that would never happen. Just absolutely crazy that Andy Reid lets Travis Kelce get away with it. What were your thoughts when you saw that whole debacle on the sidelines? Because again, we talk about this, Mom. The 49ers were unraveling, you know, and not, I'm sorry, the Kansas City Chiefs were unraveling at that point, and the 49ers just could not take advantage of it. I mean, the Chiefs were in total disarray, and then we saw a flip the second half, and then the 49ers started unraveling. But what do you think about Travis Kelce putting his hands on Andy Reid?
I thought of WWE. I thought of wrestling. I mean, it was bizarre. He was emotional. It was a frustrating point in that game. They weren't doing anything right. The only reason they were still in the game is because the defense was keeping them in the game, and San Francisco wasn't capitalizing on the opportunities they had. I think it was 10-0 at the time.
It was.
San Francisco left a lot of points on the field. And like I said, football is crazy. Kansas City won that game deservedly because of their defense. The defense was the main reason they won that Super Bowl title this year. And what are we covering tonight? If the Bengals, we're covering the defense, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
we have to get to that level. We have to get back there, and hopefully we can add some key players like a Chris Jones. I'm not saying Chris Jones is going to be a Bengal, but you saw what he did. Somebody tweeted this today. I forgot who it was, so I'm sorry I'm not saying your name. The last 3 Super Bowls, the defensive tackles have basically set the tone and won the games for the other team. If you notice in the overtime, Brock Purdy had a wide open number 11 in the end zone. But what happened? Chris Jones is right in his face, forced him to throw an errant pass. They kick a field goal. And in the first half, same thing happened. Chris Jones got pressure, forced an errant throw that would have been a touchdown potentially or close to it. 49ers had to settle for 3. That's an 8-point swing, man. That's 8 points right there, all because of a play of a defensive tackle. I mean, he's a difference maker, and it would be nice to get somebody like that.
It would be nice, since we have, these last couple years, we lost the Super Bowl because of a defensive tackle. The following year, we lose the AFC Championship game because of a defensive tackle. The same said defensive tackle that you are talking about. That I will say this: Patrick Mahomes was the MVP because everybody loves him, but the MVP of the Super Bowl was Chris Jones. And again, we saw the same thing when we had to play Aaron Donald, and the same thing when we played Chris Jones the year before in the AFC Championship game. Those guys can absolutely change the entire aspect of a football game when you have interior pass rush. And you and I are going to talk about that very, very shortly. But before we do, Juan, I'm going to ask you this question. And all of our listeners out there, guys, please throw your answers up there. I want to know Reader's Digest version, Juan, because obviously there's a lot. But how do our Cincinnati Bengals get back to the Super Bowl?
Reader's Digest version. Overly simplistic, totally Captain Obvious comments here. I've been talking about this since the season ended. We are not a Super Bowl team until we truly fix the trenches on this roster. Our defensive line, our defense gave up over 160 yards rushing a game this year. You can't win a championship that way. Can't do it. You can't be almost last in the NFL rushing the ball. We all know the Cincinnati Bengals are not going to be a run-heavy team, but they have to be better at it. They have got to be better at it. I think the Chiefs only ran the ball maybe 300 more yards than the Bengals this year. But still 17, 20, 30 extra yards rushing a game. That's huge. That's huge. It takes time off the clock. That gets you extra first downs. That helps a defense that's struggling. And the Bengals defense was struggling this year. They needed their buddy, the offensive line, and the offense to help them. And it was just an uneven year. And we're not going to get where we need to be as a team until we run the ball better and we play better defense. And that starts with the trenches. More consistent pass rush up the middle, help out that young defensive backfield that has 6 players that are first or second year players. That's what it's going to take.
I mean, I can't argue with that. I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. I'm going to say this. I'm going to try to get as oversimplistic as possible too, and I'm going to say this offseason, Mon, is dire. I mean, the Bengals have got to hit a home run. They have got to make every move the right way this offseason. It starts with making sure number 5 is back on this roster. If that means franchise tagging him or if that means signing him to a contract, you cannot let T. Higgins walk. That's my thought. I know you might think differently, but to me, T. Higgins and having Jamar Chase out there is absolutely dire for this offense. They need those 2 guys on the field. And I think the draft and free agency, they have got to hit home runs. I mean, this upcoming draft, they have got to find somebody in the first couple rounds that is going to make a huge impact on this team. And again, in the free agency, Mon, they have got to go out and get an interior pass rusher, not a second tier guy. They need to go out and get somebody that can disrupt a football game. You cannot, and I'm going to talk about this later on, but you cannot have your pass rush coming from one guy on the defensive line. You are not going to win football games that way. You're just not.
Jake, you're right.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
They've got to find a way to fix this defensive line, and it cannot be done in free agency. It cannot be done in the draft. It has got to be done in free agency, Mon. They have got to go out and at least get one elite interior pass rusher to solidify this defense.
Jake, I know you have mentioned it. I mentioned it in 2021. BJ Hill was acquired in that trade. He had 6.5, 7 sacks. Larry Ogunjobi had 7 sacks. They combined for 14.5. Why were they so effective? Because they were giving each other breathers. BJ Hill this year started off unbelievably. The Bengals had 19 sacks in the first 5 games, I think, or 6 games. They were killing people. BJ Hill was on fire. Guess what? He got worn down. He didn't have a quality backup. Zach Carter, who we had high hopes for, simply wasn't getting it done. I don't know if he gets a year 3. I think he does because, he's a draft pick. They're going to see what he has. He was getting blown off the ball. It just didn't click for him.
3.
And I tell you what, I want to be critical of the Cincinnati Bengals here. They went all in this year on Zach Carter being the main backup on that defensive line. It backfired. It absolutely backfired. We can't do that. If they're thinking some developmental rookie that hasn't really played a lot, they're expecting him to take a big step in the next year. I don't want that. I want to go get a middle tier free agent, somebody that can come in that started some games. We got to come in. And listen, I want to say something real quick. Just give me a second here. I posted something on Twitter today about Illuminor, this offensive tackle for the Raiders. He's been saying a lot of nice things about Joe Burrow. I love. He says a lot of mean things about the Chiefs. I love. And Bengal fans absolutely are just enamored by him. Guys, we need to slow down a little bit. If he's on the Bengals, I'm going to root for him. But if he signs with the Bengals, that's his 6th NFL team during his young NFL career. Do we want that starting right tackle protecting Joe Burrow? I'm sorry, man. I'm a little skeptical there. I think we need to be a little better at that spot. Go out and sign a Trent Brown. Go sign Mike. I don't know how to say his name. The other offensive lineman for the Pats. He plays guard and tackle.
Oh, yeah.
So what if it costs a little bit of money? So what if it costs a little bit more money? We got to protect the investment. There's ways to create more money on the salary cap. Have somebody restructure their contract, cut a surprise cut. There's a lot of things they can do. But man, I am sick and tired of kicking the can down the road on this offensive line. We have got to get it right.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer in this, Mon. You build from the draft, and I would love to see the Bengals this year go out and draft a couple D linemen and a couple offensive linemen and try to develop them. But for me, an automatic fix is in free agency. That is I think defensive line and offensive line are the two positions that you just cannot fix in the draft when you need an immediate fix. And the Bengals need an immediate fix. And again, I'm not saying I don't want them to draft offensive linemen and defensive linemen. I'm saying I want impact free agents to fix the offensive line and especially the defensive line before we go into the draft. And we're going to talk all about that here coming up. Free agency, the draft. It's going to be a crazy couple months. But again, for me, if the Bengals want to get back to the Super Bowl in 2024, the outline is there, right, of this football team. They have got to fix the defensive line. They have got to fix that. And I think if they do, I think every other position, and T. Higgins, defensive line, and maybe go out and get a legitimate free safety. And then we're good to go.
Can I say one thing about T. Higgins? Can I say one thing about T? Let me say something about T. I want him to be a Bengal. I hope he signs a long-term extension. That's what I want in my heart. I want him to return. He's going to be next Tuesday. I fully expect him to get tendered. Yeah. Here's the deal. If the Cincinnati Bengals know there is absolutely no way they're going to get a contract extension with his agent, if they know it's not going to happen, how can they not consider getting some draft capital? We have a lot of holes to fill. Listen, for a good football team like the Cincinnati Bengals, we got a lot of holes, and we need draft capital. I don't want him traded. I don't want it. But if we know it's not going to happen, what good is it going to do next year? We get a third-round compensatory pick the next year, and he can go to any team he wants. I don't get it.
And Mon, I don't disagree with you, but I'll say this: I'll tell you what it's worth it. If we're hoisting a Super Bowl trophy in New Orleans, then to me it's worth it, right?
I'll take it.
Then to me it's worth it. Even if we lose T the next year and we don't get anything out of it, just hoist that Super Bowl trophy, please. I will be so excited. And no, Ross, I don't think any of us have heard from Aaron in a very long time. Hopefully Aaron is okay. Before we move on to the defense, Mon, I do want to ask you this real quick because Overzealous asked about Joe Mixon. If it comes down to cutting Joe Mixon and saving $8 million, right? They save $8 million if they cut Joe, between 6 and 8, something like that.
Something around there. Yes. I don't know if it's 8. He gets.
Are you okay? Are you okay if they cut Joe Mixon?
I get it's a business. I'm a big time Joe Mixon fan. Everybody on Twitter knows that.
Me too.
I think he's a top 10 NFL back. I think people sometimes that don't like him, I think they keep on moving the goalposts, trying to alter things. He's not this, he's not that, he's not this. Well, he was never that in his whole career. Why do they expect him to be that way now? But I do understand the cap hit. It's large, and we do have a lot of needs, guys. We really do. And you said something a few minutes ago. We said it last week. This off season is huge. It's probably the biggest off season in franchise history. We have to knock it out of the park.
We have to.
I'm going to be critical of this organization right now. The Orlando Browns signing was good last off season. It's about it. We didn't do anything else.
Nothing.
And it really hurt this
nothing
team.
Else.
It really hurt us.
We did nothing else, Mon.
I want Mixon on the team. I don't think he's going to be on the team with that cap number. Hopefully they can find a number that works because he doesn't fumble. And listen, he's a great locker room presence. He really is. And he still has game, guys. He really does. I mean, guys, we are just so overly critical. Great combination, him and Brown, and maybe another running back. So I hope he stays. I don't think he will at that number.
I don't think either, but I want Joe Mixon on this Bengals team because I want him to be celebrating as the confetti comes down. He deserves it. He's been a great Bengal. All right, Mon, let's move to the defensive side of the ball. It's time to grade this defense, Mon. Not good this year. Listeners, please, out there in the comment section, let us know your grades as we go position by position. Mon, we are going to start at the defensive end position. Eric, if you will throw it up there, I think. There we go. All right, here we go. Defensive end, Mon. Where have you graded out the Cincinnati Bengals in 2023 at defensive end?
Eric, go ahead and throw the number up there. I forgot what I sent you. I did. I'm trying to search it. Okay, listen. Thank you. Yeah, 8.5. 8.5. I give you that. I'm trying to pull it up on my phone. I feel like a jerk. Okay. Trey Hendrickson alone gives it an 8.5. Off season for Sam Hubbard. And then he had a high ankle sprain of some sort. He toughed it out. Sam Hubbard is who he is. I'm glad he's on the team. He's great against the run. He'll give you 5 or 6 sacks a year. Miles Murphy at the beginning of the year was a little disappointed, but he really started to turn it on. I think he's going to have a good career. Joseph Osai, MIA, missing in action. I don't know where this guy is. I know he was injured a little in preseason, but he just didn't do much for us. And I don't know if he's going to get another year. I think he will, but we need more production from him. We need more depth. We need to get better. I mean, it can't be all Trey Hendrickson. I will say this about the defensive line. They had over 40 sacks. It's a sneaky number. It's more than the year before. I think they had 19, like I said earlier, in the first 6 or 7 games. It just tailed off after that. But think how good Trey Hendrickson is. He doesn't really have anybody else that can help him on that line. He is an absolute machine. And what the Cincinnati Bengals did last year, extending him another year, brilliant move by that front office. I said just a few minutes ago the only thing they did was Orlando Brown. Well, extending Trey Hendrickson was a positive also. But they need more depth there. They need more depth there. I wouldn't be surprised if they pick another defensive lineman in the first, second, or third round. I mean, there's a lot of quality defensive ends in this draft, defensive tackles. We're going to talk about that later. But I give them 8.5. That's the high mark on this defense.
God, I hate when we do that. I hate when we put the same thing up. I also did 8.5, Mon, and I did it because Trey Hendrickson. I mean, listen, I agree with you 100%. This guy, to me, and I know this is going to sound like a homer call, but to me, he was Defensive Player of the Year, and I'll tell you why. Because it's the Trey Hendrickson show in Cincinnati, and he still was a sack and a half away from tying the leader in sacks this year. Listen, Mon, Trey Hendrickson this year, 43 tackles, 17 and a half sacks. Mon, he had 16 tackles for loss. I mean, again, to me, he should have been Defensive Player of the Year. And I know, say I'm a homer I don't care. But he is the only guy out of those other rush ends that does not have anybody else helping him on that D-line. Now, Sam Hubbard, I will say this, he's one of my favorite Bengals. He had 58 tackles and 6 sacks this year, and he played with an injury for most of the season. So I think we can give him a little bit of a break there. But Sam Hubbard is a hell of a player against the run too. And that's something I think that kind of gets overlooked. But after those two guys, Mon, Miles Murphy, the number 1 pick for the Bengals, he had 3 sacks. He started coming on at the end of the year. You said it earlier, Joseph Osai, a guy that you and I thought we both said, Mom, before the season, this guy was going to be a breakout player for the Bengals. 10 tackles and 1 sack. That's what you got for me, Joseph? I mean, that and Mon, he was on the bench a lot, healthy on the bench. This is a team, Mon, the Cincinnati Bengals, real quick, let me throw these numbers out. 26th against the run. They gave up 2,145 yards on the ground. They gave up an average of 4.7 yards per carry, almost 5 yards a carry, Mon. 17 rushing touchdowns, 126 yards a game. And this is the killer to me, Mon. They gave up 127 first downs on run plays this year. Absolutely atrocious. Now, again, you said they had 44 sacks, but a lot of that was sprinkled in from pressures from the linebackers. From the defensive line, I think they had 22 sacks, something like that. I mean, that's just terrible. And that's what we're talking about, right? Is there's got to be some interior pass rush uh, from this defensive line. Actually, I said that wrong. 30, I meant 32 sacks, not 22. 32 sacks from the defensive line. But Mon, they got to fix this because I gave him 8.5, but that's because of Trey Hendrickson being maybe the best pass rusher in the NFL. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Everything you said. Divine brought up a good point. There's another player I did not mention, but Cam Sample has been consistent and played well. I would like to see him come in and play a little bit more. Cam Sample to me could be, he reminds me a little bit of Sam Hubbard. Maybe a little bit more athletic, a little bigger than him. Um, but Cam Sample, out of that draft class we talked about a few years ago that really struggled, the 2021 class,
Yeah.
it's Chase, McPherson, and Cam Sample were the best draft picks in that draft. And
Oh, yeah.
I still expect big things from him. He can be a good rotational piece. There's 10 defensive linemen that Bengals keep on the roster. They keep 10 every year. Jake, I could see 3 to 4 new faces, maybe 5, combination of draft picks and free agents. There's going to be an overhaul of that room. There really is. And it's
Sign
really
me
going
up.
to it's going to get
Sign
ugly.
me up, Mom.
Let's talk with the defensive tackles right now.
Listen, sign me up for that. I would love to see 5 new faces in that room. I'm going to talk about Cam Sample right now in that defensive tackle room because obviously we saw Sample moved around a lot inside and outside. I'm going to talk a little bit about Cam Sample coming up here. Defensive tackle, Mon, again, go ahead.
I got the number, Eric, so don't put it up. Okay, continue.
Did you just take your medicine during the show? Is that how you remember?
I found the text. The text.
All right, let's talk about these defensive tackles, Mon. What is your grade for this 2023 defensive tackle room on this Bengals defense?
Okay, if I was just grading our starters, we'd be pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hill and Reeder, good, solid defensive tackles.
But we're not, are we, Mon?
We're not. No, we're not. We're rating the whole room. The drop off after those two is unbelievable.
It's significant.
I gave him a 6 total. Okay, and my number basically is based on DJ Reeder. He was injured. He missed significant time. BJ Hill wore down. He started off on fire. He's a good player, but he's a player that needs, he needs a platoon system, like I said with Larry Ogunjobi. Mm-hmm. We have got to get somebody else in there that can help him. I know I sound like a parrot here. What the Cincinnati Bengals did, they really expected Zach Carter to take off and give significant snaps. We saw what happened when he came in. They were gashed. This defensive line gave up over 160 yards rushing a game. Jake, over 160 yards rushing a game. You're not going to be a Super Bowl team with that number. It's not going to happen. And they have got to fix it. They have to get better depth. Now, the scary part going into next year, we don't have DJ Reeder. If we sign him, he's coming off an injury. There's going to be a lot of new faces in that defensive tackle room for the Cincinnati Bengals. They have got to spend some money there. They're going to have to come off the wallet and get some quality players to come in and play.
I agree. I'm going to go. I went with 5.5. I gave him 5.5, a half a point below you. I think we're still kind of in the same ballpark. The 5.5, honestly, is again for DJ Reeder and BJ Hill. I mean, I dropped us significantly, Mom, because you said it, when DJ Reeder went out, this defensive line, the interior of this defensive line was atrocious, absolutely awful. Zach Carter was non-existent. Josh Tupou, non-existent. Jay Tuafele, non-existent. I mean, you cannot go into a season, and I know that front four we have put a lot of money into, but it's unacceptable to go into a season thinking that Zach Carter is going to come in and give you 6 or 7 sacks. That's not going to happen. Let me say this about BJ Hill, and I said this 2 years ago or a year and a half ago on this show. BJ Hill is one of the best free agency moves that we have made when we went out and traded for him. He is worth every penny. That dude is a player, man. He is a player. But like you said, he was wore out. When DJ Reader got hurt, BJ Hill was wore out. He did finish the year with 51 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 2 incredible interceptions. But after that, DJ Reader, 34 tackles and 1 sack. Again, that was on a season where he got injured. And Cam Sample with a sack and a half. Again, Cam Sample, I like the guy. I think he's a good filler, whether you put him at the 3 tech or the 5 tech or wind him out to a 7 tech. I think he is a legit player. But, man, when you talk about this defensive line revamping this room, I'm all for it. We should see 5 new faces in this defensive line room in 2024. Go ahead, Mom.
Jake, real quick. PFF numbers. I know, and not everybody's a PFF fan. DJ Reader was the 11th rated defensive tackle out of 130, or defensive lineman out of 130 by PFF. He was ranked 11th. BJ Hill was ranked 40th out of that 130. Their replacements. Here we go. Give me 1 second here. I lost it.
Go ahead.
Whenever they got a breather, Josh Tupou, who replaced DJ Reader, was ranked 94 out of 130. And Zach Carter, who replaced BJ Hill prominently for breathers, was ranked 100 out of 130. That's one hell of a drop-off. That's a significant drop-off. We need better depth. You remember, I'm old, the old Bengal fans out here. Remember years ago, we had Jonathan Fanene. We had these guys that would come in. Wallace Gilberry. DJ, what's that? Frosty Rucker. Frosty Rucker.
Yeah, those
they
guys
would get 6, 7 sacks. Each of them would have 6, 7 sacks a year. And like when the starters would come out, Dunlap and Johnson, you didn't really miss a beat. We need those days, man. That's what we need.
Yeah.
And man, I tell you, this offseason, they have got to hit it, man. They've got to hit it.
And remember, Frosty Rucker got a great contract, I think, from the Cardinals, right?
He did.
For playing as well as he did, coming off the bench for the Bengals. He ended up being a starter for the Cardinals and got good money for that.
And Fanene signed a big contract with the Patriots, but he had a knee issue that flared up and he didn't get to play.
Though, yeah.
He signed a big contract with them, so Belichick liked him. No, you're right, Divine. Zach Carter. Divine was on that in Spaces too. You're right, but Zach Carter has not panned out.
Yeah, no, I think that whole defensive tackle room needs a facelift. And I'm talking about the whole room except for BJ Hill. If you're going to bring DJ Reader back, I'm 100% for it. I'm the first one to say bring DJ Reader back. I think he needs to be a Bengal. But after that, I better see all new faces in that. I do not want to see Josh Tupou or Jay Tuafele or Zach Carr. I don't want to see those guys taking the field for the Bengals in 2024. If they are, Mon, we are in serious trouble. I know, but
it can take money.
Mon, it might take money, but you got to make it happen.
Oh, I'm all for it.
This is a Super Bowl roster.
How can they not make it happen? The people that sit there and want to say things, how can you not make it happen? You have to. Our trenches, I'm going to go out and say it right now. Our offensive line and defensive line, they're not in the top 2 in the AFC North. You can make arguments to the bottom in the AFC North. And that's unacceptable. We can't have that. Spend the money, make it right. Next subject.
All right. Linebackers, Mon, this linebacker room that has been incredible the previous 2 years in 21 and 22. How did you rate them in 23? I think this is an interesting one. I'm interested to see where you put them. Where's this linebacker room?
This is based solely on their play in 2023. This is not their ceiling. Their ceiling, they're better than this. But guys, I think it's a combination of things. We just mentioned the defensive line. The defensive line didn't help our linebackers this year. All right, and guess what else? Von Bell, Jesse Bates not being there. I think our experienced linebackers and Pratt and Wilson, they took on a lot of extra, cerebral stuff. They're sitting there calling plays, trying to do things, make up for the inconsistencies of our young safeties, and I think they paid for that a little bit. I think their play dipped because, man, it was like a paralysis by overanalysis. They're trying to do a little bit more than they normally would do because Von Bell wasn't back there that would help set that defense up. I gave them a 6.5. I really think their play was subpar this year. They had some big games. They had some nice interceptions, but the whole defense struggled. And I think they struggled because the play of that defensive line didn't help them. And I think they were trying to do a little bit more because they didn't, they were the veterans and they were trying to piece everybody together. And I think it took them out of their game a little bit.
Well, I'm with you. And it's funny because we're kind of off a little bit on that D tackle linebacker room. But isn't it funny? Isn't it funny when you've been around somebody for as long as you and I have known each other, you just kind of start taking on those same ideas and personalities. Because we first met, Mom, we were way off with grading. I gave this linebacker room a 7, and I'm going to tell you why I gave it a 7. Okay, because and all of you coaches out there will agree with me when it comes to this, but when your front four is as bad as the Bengals were in 2023, it makes it very difficult for linebacker play, especially in the NFL, especially when you only have 2 linebackers on the field like the Bengals do 90% of the time. I gave them a 7 because they were still the top 2 leading tacklers on this team. Logan Wilson, 135 tackles, was the leader. He had 4 picks and a sack. I mean, that's a solid year for any linebacker in the NFL. Jermaine Pratt, 118 tackles, 2 picks, 2 sacks. But again, I think when we talk about those guys disappearing in games, it's because the defensive line was atrocious. Again, part of football, that's why it's the greatest sport in the world, because it's the greatest team sport in the world. If one guy is not doing his job, it affects everyone else on that phase of the game, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams. So when your defensive tackles are getting blown off the ball and those guards are getting to the second level where the linebackers are, it is impossible to expect your linebackers to make these incredible plays, play after play, when they're getting guards and pulling tackles. When you got a guy like Trent Williams pulling around the edge, looking to destroy you, and nobody is putting a hand on him, it makes it impossible for these linebackers to make plays. I still think we have a top 5 linebacking core in the NFL when it comes to those 2 guys. I think they are top 5 in the NFL. We've seen it for the last 2 years. This year, the defensive line was just absolutely atrocious. You look at the linebackers in Baltimore. You look at the linebackers in San Francisco. Those guys are incredible because their front four is so damn good. And the Bengals is not right now. And they've got to fix it, because once you fix that, it fixes everything moving backwards, even to the back end of the defense that we're going to talk about in a minute. It helps everybody else on defense when those 4 guys are getting their hands on people and rushing the passer.
Jake, Logan Wilson was ranked 55 out of 82 linebackers.
That's crazy.
By Pro Football Focus.
That's crazy.
And Jermaine Pratt was ranked 52 out of 82 linebackers. Now, here's the kicker. Last year, they were both I think 12 and 15. So that's a significant drop. You're right. The defensive line play had a lot to do with it. And don't discount losing Von Bell. Von Bell did a lot. He was a coach on the field, him and Jesse Bates, because they both knew that defense like the back of their hand. I think our linebackers tried to take that apart.
They did.
Try to beat, and it took them. They started, they were out of position, overthinking, paralysis by overanalysis. So Hopefully, we get a vet in that backfield. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, and it's going to help the linebackers out. But I think their ceiling is much higher than 6.5.
Well, and think about
Uh,
those two guys, Mont. I mean, we just paid Logan Wilson a ton of money. We just paid Jermaine Pratt a ton of money. I mean, there's no doubt there's pressure on those guys to try to go out there and do everything because our defensive line was just atrocious. It was so terrible, Mont. Oh, I don't want to get on. Let's move on before I get pissed. Akeem Davis Gaither.
you are pissed.
I know I am pissed. Akeem Davis Gaither, I will say this. 17 tackles. We're not really expecting a lot from him, right? I mean, he's more of a special teams guy.
I like him. I like him.
I like him, but he's not going to be on the team next year. And my point is that it's going to be interesting to see some of the new faces in the linebacker room, right? Because it'd be nice to get a number 3 linebacker that could come in and spell Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. All right, let's move on. Cornerback. Very interesting cornerback season for the Cincinnati Bengals in 2023, Mon. Where do you got them graded?
Mentioned it earlier in this show, and I mentioned it in other shows. The Bengals have invested a lot of draft capital in their defensive backfield. They're very young back there. Mm-hmm. Cam Taylor-Britt was a second-year player. DJ Turner, rookie. Mike Hilton is a veteran, good player, obviously. Cheeto, great 2022. Coming off an ACL injury. We knew he was going to be on a snap count early in the season. Really took him a while to start playing better. It was a little uneven. I think DJ Turner started off really well. So impressive, man, the first 10 games. And then he hit a wall. Absolutely hit a wall. And Cam Taylor-Britt is a future star. He had his great moments, but he gave up some big plays also. He's only a second-year player, still learning things. Uneven year. I gave him a 7. I think, they really played well early in the season, especially DJ Turner. I was so impressed with him. I thought he was going to be one of the stills of the whole draft. And then I remember I tweeted that. Then all of a sudden he fell off a cliff. He hit that rookie wall and he struggled a little bit. But I still have high hopes for him. I think, we're talking about safeties coming up. I was going to mention Jalen or Jordan Battle. The cornerbacks, Cam Taylor-Britt. Awuzie started playing a little better towards the end of the season. And Mike Hilton, I'm going to tell you, that's one of the best free agent signings we've ever had. That guy is just he's just rock solid. He reminds me of Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is so infectious and he's celebrating on the sideline, keeping his teammates, excited and into the game. Mike Hilton's that way. He's running up and down the sideline and cheering these guys on. I love him, man. And I'm glad he's on the team this year. One of the best slot corners in football. I give him a 7. Earlier in the season, I would have went a little higher, but they sort of weaned off there. But my rating is 7.
All right. So I gave him a 6.5. I gave him 6.5. Again, we're right kind of there. I thought the cornerback play, again, besides Mike Hilton and Cam Taylor-Britt, I thought it was terrible. I thought it was subpar. Again, you look at this team. This is a Bengals team that ranked 28th. This Bengals pass defense ranked 28th in the NFL, giving up 4,223 yards. Listen to this, Mom. They gave up 8.1 yards a play in the pass game, Mon. That's almost a first down every reception. That is terrible, Mon. I mean, almost you would almost say pathetic, to be honest with you. Embarrassing. 250 yards passing a game, 23 touchdowns they gave up. They had 17 interceptions. But listen to this, Mom. Out of those 17 interceptions, 4 came from Logan Wilson, 2 came from Jermaine Pratt, and 2 came from BJ Hill. So 8 of those 17 interceptions came from 3 guys that don't play defensive back. Again, that is a serious problem on. Cheeto Awuzie was non-existent. I mean, we talk about Joseph Asai. Cheeto Awuzie was non-existent. 0 interceptions for him. DJ Turner played well. Again, he's a rookie. But still, 0 interceptions. So we don't got guys back there making plays except for Mike Hilton and Cam Taylor-Britt. Mike Hilton, you talk about a guy that should be talked about more. Mike Hilton this year, 84 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 picks, 12 tackles for loss from that nickel position, Mon. Mike Hilton is one of the best free agents we've ever had, and he is an absolute dude, and he should be high priority for this Bengals team to get back in stripes after next year. He's still got one more year with us. Cam Taylor-Britt is a superstar. Before he got banged up, 50 tackles, 4 interceptions, that incredible pick 6 against the Texans that put the Bengals in an opportunity to win that football game before Tyler Boyd dropped the touchdown. Besides Mike Hilton and Cam Taylor-Britt, what other corner do we really have? We don't. I mean, DJ Turner's a rookie, but
can we trace some of these problems also to the defensive line? A little more consistent, a little bit more consistent pressure that would help the defensive backfield a lot, especially a young group like that, very young group. But you're right. We expected Cheeto to come back. We knew it was going to take a few games, but he really struggled with that knee injury. And now I will say this, I would still like for him to come back. We need another veteran in that defensive backfield, especially at the safety spot. We're about to talk about safeties. Mm-hmm. I would love to keep Cheeto. I don't know if we can't afford him because he's going to expect big money. But Cheeto, the way he played the year before, he was one of the best corners in football. And that unfortunate ACL injury, messed things up. But there's a lot of potential there. I think their ceiling is much higher than 7. I really do. But I'm just basing it on 2023, and it was ugly.
I think it's okay to say, if Cheeto's not back next year, that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's
we need a vet back there. We need a vet. I don't want to Sidney Jones.
I know. I don't want to. Well, I'm not talking about putting Sidney Jones back there. I'm talking about go out and get one of these solid corners. There's a lot of good corners coming up in the free agent market that are guys that you could probably get day 2 and day 3 of free agency that would give you more production than what we've gotten from Cheeto Awuzie. And DJ Turner, I love the guy. He's fast. Those first 10 games, he did a great job when it came to completion percentage against them. But you still got to make plays, Mon, right? I mean, he
hit a wall. He hit a wall. He's definitely a starter. If we do sign a veteran, he's going to come in. He's not going to be a starter because the 3 starters are set. Britt, Turner, and Hilton are going to be the 3 main guys. I could see another draft pick. You can never, they could draft the number 1 pick at 18. They could. You can never go wrong at picking another cornerback. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could. I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Yeah,
they're going to continually restock that position. They have to, especially in the modern NFL. The next one's going to be scary.
All I'm saying is this, Mon: 17 interceptions, and 9 of them come from your defensive backs, and 8 of them come from non-defensive backs. That is a serious, serious problem. All right, here we go. To finish this off, the safety position. Oh, Mon, you talk about a mess. This was a mess. Obviously, for us, losing a Jesse Bates and losing a Von Bell was so detrimental to this team. But, man, you would have liked some production, right? What did you got for the safeties, Mon?
Well, I mean, there's not a Bengal fan that I spoke to in the offseason that, didn't think the loss of Bell and Bates. The Bell loss surprised a lot of us. We knew Bates was coming. But we knew it was going to be a transition. We knew it wasn't going to be pretty, but we didn't expect it to be as bad as it was. Nobody expected it to be as bad as it was. The lack of communication back there, and it has to be geared to the safeties. Dax Hill, physical specimen, great athlete. He made some good plays this year. Nick Scott was a significant drop-off from Von Bell. They weren't up to par. They didn't meet up to the expectations of Bell and Bates. And maybe that wasn't fair of us to think that. But the drop-off was huge. I was going to give them a very low mark, but Jordan Battle saved them. All right, I gave him a 6.5. He's a future star in the making. He's a future star in the making. I'm going to tell you, I think I've been listening to, was it Paul Daner? I think Mo Egger mentioned this. don't be surprised if Dax Hill ends up playing another spot. He's that
Yeah.
athletic. He could be the future nickel corner because he played a lot of that at Michigan. He could be sort of I know he's not as tall and as physical, but he could play a Kyle Hamilton style, all around the line of scrimmage, play the slot.
Be in the
I could see,
box, right?
yeah,
Be in
yeah.
the
I mean,
box.
he's super athletic,
Yeah.
and he's not afraid to hit people. I mean, he's a thumper too. I was really surprised about Dax Hill. I saw him laying some wood this year, but they can't get much worse than they did last year. And I think Jordan Battle came in and made a lot of good plays. They're going to get better with experience. And it wasn't pretty at times. You could tell there's a lot of miscommunications, a lot of wide open wide receivers. You've mentioned that. I mean, I never seen so many big explosive plays, and it was hard to see because what was Lou Anarumo's defense good at? They didn't do that the years before. They really didn't. And there was just some games you couldn't make it up. It felt like I was watching a video game. But they have to get better. I wouldn't be surprised if they add another veteran. It would be great if Von Bell gets cut and he comes in. He could be that coach on the field again. I would personally love to see that.
Yeah, me too.
6.5. I think I was a little generous there, but Jordan Battle is the reason.
You were a lot generous there. I can't believe that you gave them a higher grade than the defensive tackle room, and I thought the defensive tackle room was terrible. Mon, I didn't give the safeties a grade. I gave Jordan Battle a grade because Jordan Battle is the only one that I thought played the position like it's supposed to be played. I gave the safety room a 4.5, Mon. 4.5. And I don't know how you could argue that with me. Dax Hill, let me tell you about Dax Hill, first of all. I agree with everything you said. I think he's an incredible athlete. He is a hell of a tackler, Mon. He had 110 tackles this year. But that was from the safety position, Mon, not an in the box safety. That was from a safety position because he's getting beat on every play and having to tackle guys from behind. He did have a sack and a half. He had 2 interceptions, Mon, but again, I love him in that nickel safety. Let him come down the box and do some crazy stuff and play against the run. He's great against the run, but we have got to have somebody back there that can cover somebody. It is not Dax Hill.
But Jake, when safeties lead your team in tackles, that's usually an indictment on your defensive tackles and your linebackers getting washed away, and they're the last line of defense.
Well, yeah,
I think a lot of that. I think a lot of that.
No, listen. I'm agreeing with that. I think it's easy to see what the issue is when your safety, who's not even a good safety, has 110 tackles for your defense. The third leading tackler on the team. That should never be the case unless it's a guy that is being moved around all over the place and doing stuff. And sometimes they did. They moved him around. They rushed. They had him rush the passer and stuff. But Jordan Battle to me was the best pick in this past draft. I said it from the beginning that he was the best pick in the draft. After the draft, Jordan Battle, 71 tackles, 2 sacks, a pick, and he just looks the part, right? He looks like he knows what he's doing back there, and Dax Hill does not. He just doesn't. I mean, I don't know how else to say that. I like Dax Hill, and I think Dax Hill is a guy that can help this team win football games, but I don't think Dax Hill is a starting free safety on this team by far. You going from Jesse Bates to Dax Hill is like going from, I don't know, give me a Ryan Finley, going to Ryan Finley from Joe Burrow. I mean, it's that much of a drop.
Let me stick up for him a little bit. I think I'm still high on him. And I'm not disagreeing with you, Jake. I'm not disagreeing at all. I'm very high on Dax Hill. Let's just go back a little bit. Jesse Bates had a very uneven career. He struggled these first couple years, and he pieced things together. He's an all-pro. What he did this year in Atlanta was unbelievable. I think Dax Hill is going to be all right. I think he's going to get better. He has to. I don't think he's going to end up being our safety. I think he's going to play corner, slot corner. He's that athletic and he can do it, but it wasn't pretty in 2023. I agree.
All I'm saying is this. You made the point earlier saying the Bengals went into the season thinking Zach Carter was going to be this big impact player. Well, to me, what's worse is the Bengals went into this season thinking that Dax Hill and Nick Scott were going to fill in for Jesse Bates and Von Bell. To me, that is criminal of the Bengals to go into a season thinking that nonsense. We're not even talking about Nick Scott because he's so bad. He definitely won't be a Bengal next year and better not be. Let me go back to Jordan Battle though real quick, Mon. He finished the season with an 82.5 PFF rating, 10th amongst all safeties, Mon. All safeties in the NFL. Jordan Battle was 10th according to PFF. And he had an 81.3 run defense rating from PFF. Again, Jordan Battle is the real deal Holyfield. He is the best pick in this draft, and he is going to be great for the Bengals. To me, he's the next David Fulcher, a guy that you and I absolutely love watching. I'm telling you, he is the next David Fulcher. If they could just find somebody next to him that can actually cover somebody in pass, then we're going to be okay. Real quick before we get out of here, let me throw out some of these numbers. This Bengals defense was 21st in scoring defense, giving up 22.6 points a game. They gave up 384 yards a game, on almost 400 yards a game. This defense gave up 41 touchdowns. They were the 31st ranked defense in the NFL. There's only 32 teams, Mon. They were 31st. Surprisingly, they were 11th in red zone defense with a 51.7%, and they were 22nd. And this is another huge number that shows why this Bengals defense was as bad as it was. They were 22nd in third downs defensively at a 40.8% rate there. So this defense, Mon, it was not good. And I think that is something that is not a surprise to any Bengal fan out there, that we feel the way that we do about this defense, Mon. Just not good.
No, and Divine brought this up. This is brilliant. Lou Anarumo said this in the offseason. He said he didn't want to think about losing both of his safeties. He mentioned that in one of the interviews. That's and right. He says, I don't even want to think about it. Well, guess what? It happened. And, I think the Bengals were caught off guard, absolutely caught off guard when Von Bell signed with the Panthers. Yeah. And, I don't know if they lowballed him. I don't know if they offered him at all. But to bring in Nick Scott, who is a career special teamer, started about 16 games for the Rams. He's a great special teams player. I don't want to, bang on him too much, but he's not Von Bell. And that really hurt, man. I'm telling you, the loss of Von Bell really put a damper on the season. That and the injuries.
Go ahead.
No. We talk about it a million times.
We talk about Jesse Bates, losing Jesse Bates. To me, I've said from the beginning, losing Von Bell was much more detrimental to this defense than losing Jesse Bates. I truly believe that. Von Bell is a quarterback on this defense. I don't think people realize that. And Vaughn, and Vaughn too. I mean, he actually ended up on the worst end of all this, having to play for the worst team in the NFL in the Carolina Panthers. So, Vaughn, come back to us.
Yes,
come back to us. All right, guys, that is another edition of the Bengals Pulse. If you like this podcast, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Make sure you check us out on all the awesome podcast platforms, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify. If you like this podcast, give Mon and I that 5-star review. We'd very much appreciate that. Follow Mon on Twitter at The Fire Mon. Follow me on Twitter at Coach Jake Owens 9. Follow Eric on Twitter at eFlash with 2 H's 88. Follow the Cincinnati Podcast Network on Twitter at Cincinnati Pod. And as always, follow the Bengal Pulse on Twitter at Bengals_Pulse9. And on Instagram, the same without the at, Bengals_Pulse9. And as always, make sure you check out all the awesome podcasts right here on the Cincinnati Podcast Network. Mon, do you hear that? I hear mock drafts. I hear mock drafts coming very soon on the Bengals Pulse. He is Mon. I am Jake. This is the Bengals Pulse. Who Dey, Bengal fans? We'll see you next week.